Chapter 13. Choices. Before they went to sleep, Moraine knelt by each of them, laying her hand on each of their heads. Lan grumbles that he doesn't need it, and not to waste her strength, but she ignored him. Egwene was eager for the experience. Mat and Perrin were fearful but too scared to refuse. Tom jerks away from her, but she seizes his head, not suffering his nonsense. He grumbles at her throughout, but she smiles at him mockingly. They all looked refreshed afterwards. Rand had drawn himself into a niche in the walls, hoping to be overlooked and stifling his yawns. She didn't miss him though, and ignoring his protest, touches his head. His eyes widen as his tiredness drains out of him. She fell asleep almost immediately after drinking some tea. Rand wonders how he'll sleep now that he feels so awake, yet as soon as he lays down, sleep claims him. Lan wakes them an hour later to eat in silence, with warnings not to wake Moraine. When they do set off, they walk the horses to conserve them, and the Aes Sedai rode with shadowed eyes. The boys talk of how they'd never been so far from home. Perrin says they should be home in a few months, with Mat adding that the Trollocs can't chase them forever. Egwene scoffs at them, mocking the fact they'd always wanted adventure, and now that they were on one, they were already talking of going home. The journey to Baerlon took a week. All the while Lan muttered about how long it took, despite the fact he was the one who set their pace. Rand had discovered on the journey that Lan's stallion was called Mandarb, meaning blade in the old tongue, and Moraine's white mare was called Aldieb, meaning west wind. The warder would periodically ride off to scout the area. After a while, with no sign of pursuit, Rand began to think they'd actually escaped. Any sign of civilization was avoided, circling around any farms or villages in their path. At camp every night, Lan insisted that the fire be small and hidden, to be doused as soon as the tea was brewed. The warder also began to train the boys in how to use their weapons. Although little effort was needed with Mat and his bow, Lan comments on how he wishes they all had a bow. After Rand and Perrin had demonstrated they were just as proficient, Lan tells the boys that the best mental state to have when using their weapons was to empty their minds of emotion. Rand remarks that it sounds like the flame and the void that his father had taught him. Each night before sleep they were entertained by Tom with his stories and juggling. Lan would not allow him to use his flute or harp lest the noise travel. He also began to teach the boys some small things like juggling. Every night also saw Moraine and Egwene walk a short distance away for the Aes Sedai to continue her training. One morning, to Rand's shock, Egwene unbraided her hair. He demands, "What are you doing? All your life you've waited to braid your hair, and now you're giving it up. Why, for her?" She tells him that Aes Sedai rarely wear braids, and he retorts with, "You're not an Aes Sedai yet. The women's circle would throw a fit if they saw you now. Why are you going to Tar Valon? You're no dark friend." Egwene is furious and rounds on him, saying, "Do you really think Moraine Sedai is a dark friend? After she saved the village and your father?" Rand tells her he doesn't know, but the stories all say. He doesn't get to finish, as she tells him to grow up, forget the stories and use his own eyes. He tells her his eyes saw Moraine sink the ferry. Can she deny that? It descends into an argument of name-calling and shouting, until Lan tells them to be quiet, or they'll alert everyone within 10 miles. Rand realizes everyone would have heard what he said about Aes Sedai and dark friends. He looks wearily at Moraine, but the Aes Sedai just looks at him expressionless, but her eyes seem to bore into him, making him shiver. 2 days later, around the campfire, the boys again discuss that they think they've lost the shadow spawn. Mat says they should start thinking of exploring the world, maybe even all the way to Ilion, where there's no Aes Sedai, which was the exact moment Moraine appeared behind them from her lesson with Egwene. Tom tries to defend them, but she calmly tells them, "A few days of respite and you've already forgotten Winter Night. The Dark One is after you free, and if I let you go running off he will take you. Whatever the Dark One wants, I oppose it, so listen well. Before I let the Dark One have you, I will destroy you myself." Her matter-of-factness was chilling. Another night, Rand decides to follow the women, hiding behind a tree to eavesdrop. Egwene was asking about the 5 powers, earth, fire, wind, water and spirit, and how it's unfair that men are stronger in earth and fire, which are the stronger powers. Moraine tells her, "Is there a rock so hard that wind and water cannot wear it away? A fire so strong that wind or water cannot snuff it out?" After a moment of silence, Egwene asks, "The male Aes Sedai, were they the ones who tried to free the Dark One and the Forsaken? They were, weren't they? It was the men who went mad and broke the world?" Moraine doesn't answer, saying instead, "You are afraid. If you'd stayed in Emmonsfield, you would have become a wisdom, sitting in the women's circle, managing the village affairs and letting the village council think it was their doing. But you did the unthinkable. You left seeking adventure, stubbornly refusing to let fear beat you. You wouldn't have asked me how a woman becomes an Aes Sedai otherwise." Egwene says she isn't afraid, and Moraine tells her, "Better you were afraid. Few have the ability these days to become novices, let alone the desire to do so. Surely never two in one village. The old blood is indeed strong in the Two Rivers." Egwene exclaims, "Two?" Then asks who it is, Carrie Thane or Lara Ayelen. Moraine tells her to forget what she said. That woman's road lies another way. The Aes Sedai then tells her, "You want me to tell you that Aes Sedai are good and pure, that it was men who broke the world. Well, it was the men, but they were no more wicked than other men. They were insane, not evil. The Aes Sedai in Tar Valon are human with human failings. Only their ability sets them apart. Being Aes Sedai doesn't change who you are." Egwene is relieved, having worried it would change her, then asks why the Trollocs came to Emmonsfield. Moraine's head turns to stare at the tree Rand hid behind, and his breath seizes in his throat. He suddenly fears what she would do if she found him. What a fool he was to eavesdrop on an Aes Sedai. He sneaks back to camp as quickly as he can, and pretends to be asleep when the women return. That night he's plagued with a dream where all the men in the village claim to be the Dragon Reborn, while all the women wore blue stones in their hair. Eventually they reach the top of a hill and see the town of Baerlon before them. It was surrounded by a wall with wooded watchtowers and farms scattered around, just outside. Hundreds of chimneys and no thatch roofs anywhere. Mat asks if it was a city, and Perrin wonders how so many people can live in one place. Tom rolls his eyes, snorting at the word city. Moraine tells them, "The danger begins again here. Watch what you say within those walls. Do not mention Aes Sedai or Shadowspawn. Do not even think about the Dark One. Some in the city have little love for Aes Sedai, and there may even be dark friends. We want to attract as little attention as possible. We don't go by our real names here. I am known as Mistress Alice, and Lan is known as Andra." They ride up to the town gates, finding them closed despite it not yet being sunset. Lan rings the bell on the gatehouse, and a voice tells them through a gap to go around to the White Bridge Gate. When the gatekeeper sees Moraine, though, his entire attitude changes, and he opens the gate wide enough for them to enter single file. He was a little man with a toothless grin who greets Mistress Alice, commenting on her collecting down country folk, then remarks that he recognises Tom. Lan hands him a coin, saying, "I hope you remember to forget letting us through, Master Avin, and letting us back in." Avin tells Lan there's no need to pay him again, but he still pockets the coin, then reassures them he'll say nothing, especially with white cloaks in town. Rand had heard of the Children of the Light from peddlers and merchants, though most people called them white cloaks for their appearance. It alarms Lan and Moraine, though, and she asks Avin why they're here. Avin replies, "They say it's because of the false dragon in Gailton, though he's there, not here in Baerlon. It's just an excuse to meddle in people's affairs. There's already the dragon's fang on some people's doors. The governor don't trust them and won't allow more than 10 in the walls at once, and they're mad about that. They have a camp to the north, making the farmers nervous. They strut around town like they think they're better than us, saying walk in the light like a command. If they're really hunting evil, why aren't they in Saldea or Gailton? They say there's been a big battle in Gailton, real big." Moraine asks if Aes Sedai were sent to Gailton, and Avin tells her, "Oh yes, they were. It's what set that battle off, so I hear. They say some of them are dead. I know some folks don't hold with Aes Sedai, but who else can stop a false dragon? He's got thousands of followers now, and he's moving his armies southeast towards Tyr. He's named them the People of the Dragon." They thank Avin, saying their goodbyes, and ride into town, following the warder. Rand asks Tom what is the significance of Tyr and the People of the Dragon. Isn't Tyr a city on the Sea of Storms? Tom tells him it's from the Karaethon cycle. Ran says no one talks about the prophecies of the dragon back home. The wisdom would skin alive anyone who did. Tom explains. Within Tyr is the Stone of Tyr, a massive fortress built just after the break-in. The prophecy says the Stone of Tyr will never fall until the people of the dragon come to the stone. Another one says the stone will never fall till the sword that cannot be touched is wielded by the dragon's hand. The fall of the stone is one of the major proofs that the dragon has been reborn. The sword lies in the heart of the stone, within the centre of the fortress, and only the High Lords of Tyr are allowed to enter. Ran muses over the lines of the prophecy, asking, how can the dragon get the sword unless the stone has fallen? Yet the stone cannot fall until he gets the sword. Is the dragon a High Lord? Tom tells him Tyr hates anything to do with the power, almost as much as the White Cloaks, so it being a High Lord is doubtful. A prophecy that's easily fulfilled wouldn't be worth much. They arrive at the place Lan was leading them to, and he was prying at a piece of wood with a dagger. A gate springs open and they enter a stable yard of an inn, twice as large as the Wine Spring Inn. A stableman runs over, saying they can't come in that way, until the innkeeper himself rushes out, saying they're expected. He greets Moraine and Lan by their aliases, and they refer to him as Master Fitch. He tells them he'd worried about them with the weather and wolves, to come on in and he'll arrange hot meals, warm beds and baths. Come, welcome to the Stag and Lion. Welcome to Burlon. Thanks for listening. Please like, share and subscribe and help get a new channel off the ground. Thank you.